Hi, glad you could join me today. You know, in the course of doing what I do, I get to meet lots of people, and very often I meet people who are disappointed with life. People who are disappointed because of the hand life has dealt them, whether it was the fact that they don't have a silver spoon in their mouths when they were born, they weren't born into wealth. I meet people who are disappointed about the fact that, they've just had it bad. I met somebody just this week who told me that wait not for the bad luck that I had. And you meet people who just feel like they're just being chased by bad luck. But beyond the people who I meet who are disappointed with life, I meet people who life isn't too bad, it's just kind of okay, but they're really hoping for more, right? People who take, for instance, I talk to a lot of people in organizations who are saying, you know what, Michael, I wish I could do this. I really have a heart to do this, but at the same time, they've been held back. They've been held by the fear of school fees, rent, and all the other uncertainties that life could throw at them. And they're saying, you know what, I would love to, but I don't think I can. If only I had, or if only this or that had happened, maybe I would be able to do it. And when I engage them and we talk, I find out very often that what's really holding them back is it's not a vindictive boss. It's not the fact that they weren't born with a silver spoon. It's not all the different reasons that they come up with, various ones, and some of the strangest ones. In fact, it's not even their village people or the devil who we blame for everything. Very often, by the time you sit down and you really analyze the problem, you find out that what's holding us back from being who it is we want to be or being where we hope to be is actually staring us in the mirror every time we look into it. Very often, that one thing is us. And one of the things that you're going to have to be able to do if you're going to get beyond this is, and I think it's for all of us, is we've got to take responsibility for where we are in life. I think even in that word responsibility lies something really critical, because that word literally means the ability to respond to the challenges that life throws at us. Unfortunately, even though we have that ability within us, for many of us, that ability is latent. It lies there. And we go through life facing these supposedly or seemingly unsurmountable challenges in life. And we keep asking and we keep saying, what if? But literally, the answers to those issues have actually been given to us. The ability to respond to those challenges is actually lying within us. The unfortunate thing is many of us are not tapping into that potential or making use of it. So my question is, what's holding you back? And if what is holding you back is really you, how do you get beyond that? How do you move from a place where you are the one holding yourself back? What are things, very practical things that you can do to change that whole narrative for yourself? Here are 3 things I think you could commit to. You've got to change the way that you think. That's number 1, right? And when I say change the way that you think, literally, I mean it. We've got to think right. If you think you're poor, you're always going to be poor. If you think a challenge you're facing is insurmountable and it has no solutions, you're going to go past 100 solutions to that one problem between now and the end of breakfast. Or between your drive from home to your office, you pass 100 solutions to that problem and you will not see it. Why? Because you've told your mind that it doesn't exist. You see, our minds act like a heat-seeking missile, or more specifically, the RAS system on a heat-seeking missile. And what it does is very simple. A heat-seeking missile is programmed to actually identify the heat signature of war machines, right? And so when the missile is let loose on a particular target, it doesn't matter if that target is moving, that missile is going to lock onto it and it's going to follow that target until it hits it. What we program into our minds work in much the same way. Let me give you an illustration. I remember about 2 years ago, I went up onto the what's it called, Nostrum's website, and I saw this really nice pair of Ferragamo shoes, blue Ferragamo shoes. I mean, they were just one in a million. And I thought, I absolutely have to buy this pair of shoes. And I told myself, one of the reasons I wanted it was because I felt there's nobody else who has this pair of shoes in this country, at least not in anywhere that I've seen, and I'm going to get this pair of shoes. So I ordered the shoes, and here I am waiting for the shoes to be delivered. They haven't even been delivered. I go to church the next day, and guess what I see? One of my very good friends is wearing the exact same pair of shoe, and I'm thinking, what the heck? How did he get that? I thought I was going to be the only one. And the truth about it is, I bet you this guy has been wearing this shoe for maybe the last couple of months, and the truth is, I just didn't see it. And the only reason why I saw it this time was because my mind was programmed to see it. It's the same thing that happens when you want to get a car. You want to get a car and you say, oh, I really love this gold Range Rover or this gold G-Wagon, and I'm going to get it because nobody else has a gold G-Wagon. And guess what? You get on the street and guess what you see? Not one, not two, maybe 3 or 4 gold G-Wagons. And you're thinking, where the heck? I didn't know they existed. But those cars were always on the road. The only reason your mind saw it, or the only reason your eyes saw it this time, was because your mind was programmed to see it. And before that, your mind was numb to it because your mind was not focused on it. What we focus on, what our mind focuses on, our mind sees. And what our mind sees, our mind helps us to bring to a reality. What story are we telling ourselves, right? And I'm sure you've probably met people like this, people who would tell you, oh, I just always fail and I'm never going to be able to do this. Or you find a girl that says, you know what, I just always end up with players, or whatever it is. And these people tell themselves this story over and over again, and it seems like they're just stating a statement of fact. But what they're saying as a statement of fact is actually more a prediction of the future, because what they say, their mind begins to believe, and all of a sudden, all their mind can do is to work in ways that are consistent with that story that it's heard over and over again. And so my question is, what story have you been telling your mind and that your mind has come to believe? What insurmountable problems do you have stuck in your mind, or what problems have you labeled insurmountable in your mind, so much so that your mind has begun to believe it and believes it so strongly that those problems cannot be solved? Truth, there's a solution to every problem that exists. And the question is how, and what is that solution? Now, if you're going to succeed and you're going to get beyond the place where you are in your way, you've got to first and foremost change the way that you think about the challenge that you face. So that's the first one, change the way that you think. Here's a second thing you've got to be able to do to get beyond the place where you are the one in your way. Number 2 is begin to take massive action. It's not rocket science. Think as positively as you want to all day long. If you don't begin to do the right things and you don't begin to take the right actions, you're going to stay exactly where you are. It doesn't matter how well you think about passing an exam. If you're not going to do what will help you pass that exam, nothing's going to change. For all you care, you can decide that you're not going to do what's it called, that you're going to lose weight, right? And I could sit in my house and say, you know what, I want to lose 15 pounds between now and the end of the year. But you know what, if I tell myself I want to lose 15 pounds between now and the end of the year, but I don't change the way that I eat, I keep eating at 10:30 at night, and I'm not just eating at 10:30 at night, I'm eating a super heavy meal at 10:30 at night, you know. I'm eating not 3 square meals, I'm eating 5 square meals and a bit more. Beyond that, nothing's going to change. For all you care, all my talk about losing weight is at best wishful thinking. If we do not take action, and we don't take action fast and consistently, it doesn't matter what we think, we're not going to get the results that we get or that we want. And unfortunately, many people are caught in this particular place. They might even think, some might even think of what is good, and they might change the way that they're thinking. But if you're not taking the actions and the steps that are going to help you get from where you are to where you need to get to, you'd find out that you will never get there. Now, what's the worst that could happen if you take an action, right? So now, if you take an action, 2 things can happen. One is you could actually succeed. So you take an action and you succeed. And guess what happens when you succeed after taking an action? You get encouraged. You feel motivated to even do more. And you ride off of the encouragement you get from that first action. You go out there, you do more again. And the more you do, the more successful you become. And it becomes almost a vicious cycle of success. So that's one thing that could happen. But you know what? The other thing that could happen is you go out there, you try, and you fail. But is that the end of the world? No, I do not believe that it is. In fact, I think in failure, and we've got to be able to open our eyes to this and see that failure is really not the end. Failure is not the opposite of success. As someone said rightfully, failure is actually the path to success. I think you've got to change the way that we think. We've got to change the way we think about failure and see failure as something to help us to get to the end. Failure is not the kind of thing you meet and you throw your hands up and say, I tried. Failure is what you should meet along the way and say, you know what, I tried this way and this didn't work, and so that means there must be another way for me to achieve what it is that I've set out to do. So the first thing you've got to do, you've got to change the way that you think. The second thing you've got to do, you've got to make sure that you take massive action. And here's the third thing you've got to do. You've got to be persistent. Now, I've studied successful people, and a lot of reading that I do now is really focused on the life of successful people and trying to understand what is so peculiar to these people. What do they do that I need to learn from? And one of the things that is so clear to me, super clear, and that I see as a consistent theme in the lives of very successful people is that these people are persistent. They just don't know how to take no for an answer. I mean, life hits them and they get right back up and they go at it again. It doesn't matter the challenge that they face. They are absolutely dogged. They're tenacious. They're like super sales agents, but they're not selling anything. They're actually demanding things of life, right? You tell them no and they come back again, and you tell them no. And after a while, you're thinking, is it that you don't understand the meaning of no? Right? Because they just don't take no for an answer. And I think a lot of us as well have got to be able to get to that point where regardless of what it is we're facing, regardless of the challenge, we're committing to stay consistent. We're committing to be persistent and to keep pursuing the goal that we're trying to achieve, without giving up. Some of the best books that I've read in my life, I'll share with you two of them. One is called The Millionaire Next Door. And I remember in The Millionaire Next Door, I read it well over a decade ago. And in that book, they profile the lives of people who are self-made decamillionaires in US dollars. And what they tried to profile was what's so peculiar to these people. And this whole point of persistence was one of the things that was key. In fact, what they found out was that on average, a decamillionaire actually never makes their first million until they get involved with their seventh venture, right? So they've tried 6 times and they failed on average. And the first $1 million that they make actually comes from their 7th venture. So I'm close, by the way. I'm counting, I think I'm on 5 or 6. I'm almost there. So watch out. But that's one thing. Now, here's the second book that I read that I think is so powerful, or so powerfully illustrates this whole concept. It's the book Think and Grow Rich by Napoleon Hill. And in that book, he tells a story of a gentleman, a young prospector called R.U. Darby. And R.U. Darby was a young man who lived in Maryland back then. And when he heard about the gold rush, he decided to go off to Colorado. He goes to Colorado and he does a little bit of prospecting, and he finds a bit of gold. He covers it up, returns to Maryland, and he raises money from friends, from family, from investors, and himself and his uncle go back to Colorado. They buy the land and they begin to dig. Now, they got their first barrel of gold, they got the second one, the third one, and all of a sudden, the gold vein dries up, like completely dries up, and they panic. Right? And they dig and dig and dig and dig and dig, and they could not find or refine the gold vein at all. It was just gone. And they thought, oh my goodness, we paid all this money to buy the land, to buy the equipment, and nothing. And they persisted, and after a while they decided, you know what, let's call our losses and let's move on. And so they sold all their equipment and the mine to a junk man who typically buys things for junk. He resells them and so on and so forth. But this junk man was a bit wise and very smart. And what he did was he engaged a team of engineers to come and to check the property out. Now, the engineers came, they checked the property out, and what they found was that, in fact, there was gold on the property, and they felt that the previous owners, which is R.U. Darby and his uncle, just didn't understand the layout of the property, because if they had, they would have known that the property lay on a fault line, and so there was a particular place where the gold was most likely to be found. And the engineers prospected, and they told the junk man, they said, you know, in all reality, we believe about 3 feet from where they stopped digging, you would find gold. And believe you me, they dug. This was a true life story. They dug, and 3 feet from where R.U. Darby and his uncle stopped digging for the gold. They hit the gold vein again and they got a ton of gold from that same property. And these guys had walked away from their gold just 3 feet from it. Here's the moral of the story. You cannot give up and you must remain persistent, because you just never can tell how close you are to striking gold. But if we give up at the sign of failure, and if we give up because we feel we've tried and nothing's come out of it, again, you just never know how close you might be. And too many people have walked away from life-changing experiences by just giving up at the wrong time, sometimes just 3 feet away from hitting goal. Great part of the story. R.U. Darby didn't end there. He learned his lesson from that, and he became one of, in fact, the most successful insurance salesman in the US sequel to that. Again, just learning from that experience and vowing to remain persistent in everything that he did. He recouped everything he lost and did even better than he could ever have done on that gold mine. So, the question again, what do we do when what's standing in our way, or all that's standing in our way, is us? Very simple, 3 things. Change your mindset and the way you think about things. Number 2, commit to massive action. And number 3, persist at whatever it is you've committed to do. And I do hope that you find this useful on your journey to attaining success, whatever that is for you. Thank you.